Ready? All right, good morning, everyone. As Pastor said, we are here to talk about the new brand identity for Water of Life Lutheran Church. Before we get started, I know most of you, but I see some new faces, so I'll do introductions on myself. My name is Joshua Krohn. I'm a lifelong member of the Wells and a member here at the Racine campus of Water of Life Lutheran Church. That sounds weird to say because it's been Epiphany for so long. But I've been designing logos and brand identities for 15 years. So by day, I work remotely as the design director at a brand agency called Focus Lab. We are headquartered in Savannah, Georgia. Like I said, I work remotely from there. Our specialty is primarily business-to-business tech companies, and I lead a team of 6 other designers in the craft of brand design. So here's just a sample of work that I've done both as an independent designer and through Focus Lab. But I do have expertise also in working with nonprofit organizations. So this was a project that I had done or worked on a while ago with Pastor Burgess when he was still at Trinity Caledonia. This is Choices of Life, which is a nonprofit. They were in Racine and now they're in Kenosha, and they help expectant mothers when they find out that they're pregnant. I've worked with a couple of churches also. This one, Goodview Trinity, is a congregation in Winona, Minnesota. I worked with them on their brand identity, new logo, and so on. And then most recently, worked with WLS, Wisconsin Lutheran School, on their rebrand as well. So very familiar with the nonprofit space as well. So before we embark on a new brand or new logo project, we try to identify the problem. And the challenge with Water of Life was actually relatively simple relative to a lot of the other projects that I work on. But it's a new organization, it's a new name, and so that's a pretty straightforward problem. It's the merging of 2 Racine area churches, so Epiphany and New Hope, and the merge brings about a new name. And with that name, we need a new logo and a new brand identity. So background on the naming. The name Water of Life Lutheran Church holds both earthly and heavenly significance, and that was by design. On Earth, Racine is near the shores of Lake Michigan, so we have the Lake Michigan and the Root River running through Racine, so Water of Life made sense from that perspective. But more importantly, has the heavenly significance. So in Revelation 21, verse 6, Jesus says, "To anyone who is thirsty, I will give freely from the spring of the water of life." So we identified the problem. We also want to keep in mind our audience. And this is something very important as we design new logos, new brand identities, is that we're keeping our audience in mind. And the church has 2 audiences. We have primarily churched members and then unchurched members. And I think it's more important that we keep our unchurched members in mind as we embark on this project as well. So we have lifelong members, ranging from lifelong members to those hearing about Jesus for the first time. And so we want to make sure that we have an identity that speaks to all those audiences. One of the things that we look at also is brand attributes. And so these are words that we try to express in the brand. And some of that is very easily done through visuals. A lot of the stuff that you'll see today is the visual identity, but other things that impact the brand are things beyond just visuals. So things like how we treat new members, how we welcome visitors into the church, and how we present ourselves online and within the community. And all of those things work together to make up our brand. So these are some of the words that I looked at while designing the new Water of Life brand identity. And these 3 kind of floated to the top for me and the brand committee. So we wanted to design something that is inviting, of course, something that is sincere, which is a little bit more difficult to manifest visually, and then faithful. That's probably not anything it's going to be, I won't be able to execute on that visually. So again, that's talking about things that, that are going to be affected by how we act as a church and an organization. And so there's a little bit of preamble here, and I put this in on all branding presentations because for someone like me that does this every day, this stuff is almost second nature. But for someone that's evaluating and looking at work for the very first time, these are some important things that we want to keep in mind. So most of you are going to be looking at unfamiliar symbols and shapes. So logos are just circles, rectangles, squares, and we put them all together, and it creates what we call a logo. And when you first see that, it's unfamiliar, and it's tempting to say like, well, this looks like this, or I think it should look like this. But just while it's difficult to do, just put those personal tastes aside, what you like, what you dislike, and keep in mind that we're designing for something that works for our audience. So when I'm designing, I'm not designing for myself. I know what professionally looks good, but I'm not designing for myself. I'm designing for our audience. And it's tempting to try to pack the entire Water of Life story into the logo, but that's not what logos are for. So it's for identification. We're identifying our organization. We're not trying to communicate everything that Water of Life is, what it stands for, and all of that. So it's an introduction to a conversation, hopefully a very long-lasting conversation that members are going to have with the church over their lifetime. But the logo is not your entire life story. It can't be. Again, it's just a means of identification. You can also think of the logo as a vessel, so as something that holds our meanings and feelings and our associations that we're going to have for the church. It's kind of like a bucket that's going to hold that stuff over the life of the brand. And then the last slide, I think, before we get into the presentation, is a good logo does many things. It's about what works, and I appreciate that a lot of this is ambiguous. So what does it mean? What does it mean for a good logo that works? What does that mean? Again, it's just going back to it's designing something that works for the audience and for the organization. It's going to be appropriate in form and concept. What does that mean? It's distinctive and memorable while staying simple enough to be flexible for any size and any application. And so you might not know how to evaluate according to that criteria, but that's fine. That's my job. And with that, we'll get into the presentation. So a lot of the times I'll name concepts, but this one was pretty easy. Once you see the logo, you'll understand that this logo was designed to be Water of Life. So the name of the concept is namesake. We're naming the logo after the church. So there's a little bit of story here before we get into the logo. The world feels like it's always changing. And in that change, we get lost. We look for comfort in the shiny and the new. We look for comfort in the things of this ever-changing world. Chasing comfort in earthly things only leaves us feeling alone. What we need is not of this world. We need something that the world simply cannot give, something that hasn't changed, remains unchanged, and will forever be unchanged. To anyone who is thirsty, I will give freely from the spring of the water of life. And here it is. So I'll talk a little bit about what we designed into this logo. Of course, Water of Life is the name of the church, so we're representing, Water of Life is Jesus, so of course the cross is there. We're a religious organization, it makes sense to have a cross in there. We have a water drop, of course, representing water, and then also the tie to baptism, and then a shield. So why the shield? So when we embarked on the WLS rebrand many years ago, Mark Blauert had a question for me. You know, is there a future one day where the church and the school have something that ties them together visually? And we didn't know the question, or I didn't know the answer to that question at that time, but we wanted to explore it in this visual identity and think that it works. And so that is the reason for the shield, is to have a tie in between the school and the church. So this is the logo locked up with the text, which is what we call the logo type, Water of Life Lutheran Church. And this is some very highbrow design speak about why the particular font was chosen for this, so I'll breeze past that. Colors for the brand were inspired from bodies of water. Of course, again, I think it makes sense, but this is just an aerial shot of a lake. But you see we're using like a dark greenish blue, a green, a light blue, and a tan, which is called sand. And this is sort of the color composition, just some rough ideas of how color can be used throughout the brand identity. And so here's a look at them side by side. We have the English version and then the Spanish translation as well, so you can see how it works in both English and Spanish. And so I've shown the logo, I've shown color. Logo, color, and then what we call typography are the sort of three core pillars of a brand identity. And so typography is really just picking out fonts that look good together and that we can use throughout the brand identity. So this is a typeface called Francis, and this one is called Carla. You don't need to know about all the design nerdy details about why they were chosen. But we've seen those three pieces of the identity, and this is how they all potentially work together. So now from here on out, the end of the presentation is basically showing it in context. So as a designer, my job then is to imagine all of the ways that it can work. So we're kind of stress testing it, looking at how it can work on everything that we need it to work on. So from social media to print and so on. And so we'll show some of that now. So this could be how maybe door hangers or door flyers work. Again, we're looking at color working together. We're looking at the type system working together, and then the logo. How it could potentially be used across pieces of apparel like a tote or a laptop sticker. Maybe a car decal, and here you can see them working together, WLS and Water of Life. And this is kind of where it gets really exciting for me. So we can take that mark, that shield, and we can use it in a number of different ways throughout different collateral. So we can use it as a frame. We're framing a person's face. We can also use it kind of like a window, so we can fill that mark with another image. And we can use that as a device within brand communications to further the message that we're trying to say. Potentially out-of-home advertising, maybe on a billboard, maybe not, but that's how it could look. Maybe more applicable, social media, Instagram stories, so we could do like a logo introduction, again, more of the visual identity system, verse of the day, how that all color, type, and logo are working together. On Facebook, how it works in the profile picture and cover images. Live streaming church from home, how that all looks together. And eventually on the new website, how that could potentially look with color, logo, photography even working together. Church sign, realize we're probably not going to do that, but it gives you an idea of how it looks. And then maybe some wayfinding, so on the right-hand side there, you could have like a white vinyl decal on a nursery door. If we didn't want to do bulletin covers, if we wanted to leverage just type and the logo, how that could potentially look. You can see how long we've been working on this. This is back from early February. Some of these applications are pretty glamorous, but you also have to think about the not so glamorous ones. So a mailing label, for instance. How does it work there? Business cards, of course. Maybe a welcome packet of sorts. Something a little bit more tangible, maybe more applicable also, are email signatures, logos in our emails. And then maybe dream a little bit bigger. How do we have a little, some more apparel for Water of Life so people can represent and champion the new Water of Life brand? So maybe an enamel pin, put it on a shirt, put on a coffee mug. And that's it. So Water of Life Lutheran Church, Agua de Vida, Iglesia Luterana. That's it. So I'll leave it there and just open it up for questions, comments.
Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, do people think that should emphasize it a little bit more?
Sure.
In some applications?
Yeah, so I'll repeat the question. The question is about sizing of the logo throughout the presentation, throughout different pieces of collateral. And that's definitely something that's always going to be looked at when we design collateral, when we design pieces. We're going to look at size, make sure that it's legible, and so on. The unfortunate part of a presentation like this is we're looking at it on a tiny screen up here, and then we take the screen and we shrink it down. We put like a picture of a website on there, so it's even smaller. And so it's not a good representation of how we would actually see the logo in real life, but that's always definitely a consideration as we design out pieces. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, are there any restrictions or special permissions around using the new logo with, in the school or with the first EVAN logo? There'd be guidelines around how we can use the logo with other organizations, how we partner with other organizations. So yeah, that'd be included in the guidelines. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is it always going to be in this orientation with the shield on top, the text on the bottom? No, I don't think so. So I'll go through the presentation just a little bit. So here you can see, like on the shirt, for instance, we're using the shield separate from the type. And then I'm going to go back up to, so here in the email signature on the right, you can see that the shield is on the left, text on the right. So there'll be a number of orientations, lockups to help use that logo wherever we need to for space requirements. Any other questions? In the back?
It's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
For all your hard work, and it makes good sense, and it's beyond things that I think about, but you brought out so much, Joshua, and I just think it's awesome.
Thank you very much. For the recording, that wasn't a question. That was just praise from Laura.
Can you tell everyone, Joshua, what the time frame is then with use of the logo, if it's approved and everything, and then
Yes. So the question, or yeah, the question is just the timeline for when this is rolling out. And so I believe this is going to go before the church council at their meeting on the 16th, right? April 16th. And if it's approved, then we pretty much go pedal to the metal to get things rolled out, because the intent is for by June, I forget.
Third Sunday in June.
3rd or 4th?
The third Sunday in June will be the last Sunday of, we're going to have a special service to celebrate Epiphany and New Hope. And the last fourth Sunday of June will be Pastor Krohn, our district president, preaching for the first service of Water of Life.
Right. So the last Sunday in June, when Pastor Krohn comes to preach on at Water of Life, basically everything has to be rolled out before then. And so once the council approves, we're going to be working on getting all the graphics ready for social media. And really the website is going to be the big lift to make sure, because we're merging 2 campuses, so we have to have one website now. So we're taking information from both websites and putting it into one website. So that's the timeline, end of June, when everything will be fully rolled out.
And then with that, because I know some people said we're kind of in a middle stage, what are we? You know, and we're Epiphany, New Hope, and Water of Life at the same time, kind of. But when everything's ready, hopefully end of May, beginning of June, then we're going to be out promoting ourselves to community. We're a brand new church in the community, even though you've seen us here for 90 years or 40 years.
That's right.
What about the outdoor church signs at both campuses?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know the exact logistics on that. I think the Epiphany sign, there's a panel that can just be redesigned and inserted. And then at New Hope, I think they are going to do something temporary to cover that sign. And then eventually they'll get a new sign.
I was just, making an assumption that if we have the need to reference campus locations, Racine or Caledonia, that will be separate from the logo and just used appropriately.
Yeah, so the question is, between Racine and Caledonia locations, how are we going to incorporate that into whether it's the logo or separate? We haven't thought that completely through yet. I have ideas on how we're going to execute on that, but yeah, nothing that we wanted to put in the presentation. Yeah, but we're thinking about it. Anything else?
Well done.
Oh, thank you very much. Mark?
I was going to say the same thing. I really appreciate tying the school and the church together. I think that's really going to be beneficial for us.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for your questions, comments. Appreciate it.
So then what we'll do is this week, we'll get it out as just something online, as an online survey, basically up yes or no, and then hopefully it's yes, because then we can move forward, then the council would approve or disapprove it, and then we can move forward. But we're going to give everyone the opportunity, from the little kids on up, just to give their input on it.